Our lockdown dramas were put into perspective this week as major cities across the United States enforced curfews that meant even New York, the city that never sleeps, now had a mandated bedtime. Across our screens this week, we saw violence break out and 250 protests erupt across the US after a police officer was charged with murder for the killing of George Floyd, an unarmed African-American man in police custody. Soon we were bombarded with images on TV and social media of destruction, bravery,
what do we want? Justice!
mercy,
If I'm not over here blowing up stuff, then what are y'all doing?
anger, and defiance. Then, as if to mark the divide between white and black America, images of the protests not interrupting brunch, or even this guy fanging it on an elliptical.
He is in Planet Fitness working out.
There were also touching signs of solidarity. The usually reclusive community of Mennonites joined the protests in Minneapolis. Hand sanitizer was given out to protesters in Chicago because we are, after all, technically still in the middle of a pandemic. A sheriff in Flint, Michigan marched with protesters, and this woman might have gotten away with an ill-gotten dessert.
You see someone actually walking away with a cheesecake there after the Cheesecake Factory was looted. Unclear where they may have gotten that.
Yeah, I hate to go all Hercule Poirot, but I'd be checking out the Cheesecake Factory. The anger reached Donald Trump's doorstep, in part due to inflammatory tweets sent out by the president at 1 a.m. on Friday that provoked a stunning response from Twitter.
He had referred to protesters as thugs and wrote, "When the looting starts, the shooting starts."
Soon after, Twitter flagged that comment as glorifying violence and hid the tweet behind a warning.
Oh, great. They've turned his tweets into clickbait. That phrase, "when the looting starts, the shooting starts," originates from a racist Miami police chief in 1967 and has long been a favourite of white supremacists.
I don't know where it came from. I don't know where it originated. I wouldn't know a thing like that. But I will say it's very accurate in the sense that when you do have looting, like you had last night, people often get shot and they die, and that's not good, and we don't want that to happen.
As the situation worsened, the president took the brave step of turning the lights off at the White House so the protesters would assume he wasn't home. The next day, Trump took to the corner of the Rose Garden where they keep all the flags to calm everything down.
These are not acts of peaceful protest. These are acts of domestic terror. We will end it now. Today, I have strongly recommended to every governor to deploy the National Guard in sufficient numbers that we dominate the streets.
Then, with the curfew about to begin, Trump used his remaining daylight hours to take what was surely the longest walk he's ever taken without a golf club in his hand.
He was going to a special place now.
And stand out the front of a local church with a Bible to collect some thoughts and prayers.
Wow, that is a show of defiance against the protesters.
Defiance is one way to describe it. Another would be that protesters were gassed and shot with rubber bullets so the president could have a photo op. Absolutely tempting a smiting. The White House commemorated the event with this inspiring propaganda video. Kim Jong-un would be proud. Soon, the media covering the story were also under attack. The Channel 7 camera crew was bludgeoned, a CNN journalist was arrested live on air, and a photographer was blinded by a rubber bullet. Watching all of this, it was hard not to think about how a video exposing police brutality has led to heaps more videos exposing police brutality.
Look at that, the police absolutely laying into the protesters there.
The protest received wall-to-wall coverage back home too, much to the annoyance of this reporter who wanted to talk about the exciting news that cinemas were reopening in Adelaide.
We're going to take you live now to Minneapolis, where authorities are giving an update on the rolling protest.
Prime Minister Morrison invoked Martin Luther King Jr.
I saw a good meme on the weekend. Martin Luther King, didn't change anything by burning anything down and looting any shops, and so was as upsetting and terrible as the murder that took place. And it is shocking. It's just that also just made me cringe. And I just think to myself, how wonderful a country is Australia.
Yes, was it not MLK himself who said, "I have a meme"? And that meme is, how good's Australia? So how good is Australia? Well, frankly, terrible. When you consider the video that emerged this week of a 17-year-old Aboriginal boy being thrown to the ground by a police officer, and the fact that we've had over 400 Aboriginal deaths in custody since the end of the 1991 Royal Commission into Aboriginal deaths in custody without a single conviction. But when it came to trying to use Martin Luther King Jr. to claim the higher ground, we can't go past French DJ David Guetta, who had the highest ground of all.
The world is going through difficult times, and America too, actually, and I made a special record.
I have a dream.
Yeah, nice one, David. That should solve racism. Off the back of this $60 billion JobKeeper cluster farce, on Friday the government announced another gargantuan mistake, saying it would pay back all $721 million collected by Robodebt.
Hundreds of thousands of Centrelink recipients will be getting a refund from the controversial Robodebt scheme.
Robodebt generated letters demanding welfare recipients prove they hadn't been overpaid, based solely on average income data generated by the Australian Tax Office.
In good faith, the government will be repaying those debts to those Australian people.
So they'll be giving back the money they unlawfully took from poor people in good faith. Hallelujah. The Robodebt scheme was a diabolical mix of debt collectors and Robocop, and predictably it pushed people to breaking point.
I can't pay this $22,000. I mean, what do I do now?
Surely with all this good faith floating around, the government would say one little word: sorry.
Do you now apologise for putting this flawed system in place?
Well, the system was flawed. I'm not going to use that word because there's litigation ongoing.
Yes, nothing says we regret the pain we've caused like I can't apologise for legal reasons. Unsurprisingly, people weren't satisfied with that.
There are calls tonight for the Government Services Minister to resign over the government's Robodebt debacle.
Come on, Stuart Robert won't resign. This is just another glorious mistake in a long line of mystifyingly survivable Stewie screw-ups. I mean, there were the media reports that he defended a property developer with a parliamentary speech that was co-written by a lobbyist for the same developer. There was the time he reportedly made his unwitting dad the director of a company that was winning government contracts. The time he had to pay back almost $38,000 in excess internet data costs that he knowingly charged to taxpayers. The time just a few months ago when he claimed the MyGov website was crashed by a cyber attack, despite it actually being caused by just the millions of newly unemployed people logging on. And then there's the time he briefly became the director of a cryotherapy company founded by a convicted rapist, which is not just a huge scandal, but an unprecedented arrangement of words. And in a week where the news was incredibly bleak everywhere you looked, there was one positive. Footy's back.
And we're back. It's been 67 days. Welcome back, Rugby League. We've missed you.
Yes, the NRL returned, but it was a bumpy start as Broncos player Brodie Croft failed the corona-mandated temperature check twice before passing it on the third attempt and being allowed to play. Which sounds a bit dodgy, but in the NRL you actually get 5 attempts to keep going before they take the ball off you. And sure, stadiums were slightly more empty than usual, but the NRL was still all about getting the fans involved. Aside from pumping in fake crowd sounds, there were cuts to excited fans cheering, devastated fans suffering. They had drive-in footy where fans could watch from their cars, which is a great idea since no one drinks during the game. And for just $22 each, fans could upload photos and have cardboard cutouts of themselves added to the grandstand.
There in the green sweater, that's Harold Shipman, the most prolific serial killer in modern history. He's killed as many as 250
Not cool.
of his patients.
No, not cool. And at 250, that's more than a Gold Coast Titans home game. And you think that might be the worst of it, but Matty Johns decided to do one better on his show, photoshopping in one of history's greatest monsters. Sorry, I'm no prude, but there is just no place for Smooth FM's Richard Wilkins on our screens. And that's the week.